Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today. Huge interest in that piece there with John, and I will acknowledge what's coming into us in just a few moments' time. But delighted to be joined in the studio now with Superintendent Eddie Golden. Good morning to you, Eddie.
Good morning, friend.
It's
Morning, listeners.
good to see you today. We're swiftly kicking people out of here and bringing people in. You can't beat it, can you? Can I start, Eddie, with the Scramblers, because it's what's making the headlines at the moment, and in fact, as we speak, I think the government is looking at introducing legislation here. Has that become a problem here? I know it's a big problem in the cities, Eddie, but is it a problem here in Tipperary?
I think what has really happened is, I suppose, look, with the fatality recently, unfortunately, it's brought it to the front again. Look, it's always been on the table that scramblers have been a problem, particularly in the cities. I remember a number of years ago, I've been on a working group when the initial move was to look at legislation of how we were going to combat the problems of young people getting scramblers in around housing estates, going across green areas, more prevalent in the cities, I would say, at that stage. And I remember being on the working group as well where legislation was drafted for how to combat that, and that came out in the 2024 Road Traffic Act. So within that act, we have power to seize vehicles. There's a range of different powers with that act, and I suppose, look, it comes down then to the dangers associated with these vehicles now on the public roads. But
do you need this new legislation, or this new addition to the legislation, I suppose, Eddie, to police it properly? Is that what the case is?
I suppose all legislation is welcome if it can have a positive effect on the problem. I think what really has come into this now is that there's a lawlessness after creeping in, particularly in the cities, whereby we have young people goading the guards into chases. I've seen the videos myself, and it's not to say that we don't have a no chase policy on it, but obviously anytime we get involved in a chase, the risks associated with that to the public are massive, and we have to dynamically risk assess all those situations. So it's a difficult one for the guards to navigate from that point of view, that the more you chase these young people, the more they want to be chased, and
that's part of the kick for them.
Unfortunately, it is, friend. It reminds me of back in the 80s and 90s, where we'd stolen cars coming up to Garda stations and doing handbrake turns, looking for chases back then, and the risk associated with all that. So at present, what I would say is that, look, it's becoming a bigger problem. It's definitely a problem in the urban areas. Rurally as well, though, I am getting the feedback to say that when it comes to the green laning now, and there are groups that are well organised and do this as a recreation, and that's the first thing to acknowledge, that there is people do have a sporting kind of aspect, a recreation aspect. They buy their bikes, they trailer them to locations. They are, I suppose, responsible as much as they can be in how they go about their recreational activities. But I am getting feedback to say that there are a cohort who are not as responsible, who are on lanes, probably up around the V or in other areas, mountainous areas, where there's walkers as well, and that's where the conflict is starting to come in. But what I'm getting feedback is that that's where conflict is coming in, because people are walking with their dogs or their families. These motorcycles are coming along, or quads, and then once they meet, there is a danger. Now, funnily enough, I did speak to somebody that would be very responsible in that area, and does it as a recreational activity, and they were explaining to me that there has been an influx of people buying scramblers in the last number of years as a hobby, and I suppose it's that whole area of where do they go and how do they manage that then. And he also explained to me that there are regulated events now being organised more only in the last number of months, because the insurance situation has been resolved in relation to those type of public events with motor racing and motor events. So there's a mix and match of all that going on at present. But it really comes down to the fact that, look, the fundamental problem with the scramblers were they're basically off-road
Yeah, I was just going to ask you for a definition, Eddie, because you're into bikes. So what are they really?
So really they're off-road motorcycles which were predominantly designed for use. You'll see there's sports all over the world about these guys going up and
mountainous terrain and all
mountainous
that
terrain, but
yeah.
also there's a profession in this.
Yeah.
Some people would have these motorbikes and they do a lot of aerobatics and stuff.
It's great skill to it.
Great skill to it. And then that has now manifested itself into normal people buying these and trying to mimic that type of behaviour and, doing wheelies and totally unacceptable behaviour and dangerous behaviour on the roads. And that's where Garda Síochána comes into it, I suppose, to try and stamp that out and do it. But I have had reports of, for example, like that, somebody gets a scrambler, they go up and down the main road, you can hear this noise, and then by the time we get there, unfortunately, they're gone. We have followed up on a couple of those and met the owners of those and told them that they're not allowed to have them on the road. Obviously, we need to stop them on the road to prosecute them.
If they are on the road, Eddie, obviously they need insurance and tax.
They need insurance and tax. And the key to this is a lot of scramblers, there's no identification on them, so they're not registered like a normal motorcycle would be, that they would have a registration plate. So that is one of the pieces that the legislation probably would help us when it comes to seizing the vehicles, that we would just seize the vehicle if it wasn't properly licensed. Now we can do that under Section 41 of the Road Traffic Act before this, but specifically with scramblers, I think it's moving towards now is banning them totally. I always am a bit wary when we come to total bans of anything. I think there has to be a good conversation about this,
because there are legitimate users of these things.
There are legitimate users, like everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that conversation is probably happening at a high level at present. We're hopeful for that, and we'll see what legislation comes down. But at present, there is legislation that would cover us to take those types of vehicles.
I heard Simon Harris say something about that. I mean, what he would envisage is a situation where the Gardaí could impound these things and destroy them, actually, so they'd never get back to the people involved.
Yeah, a lot of these motorcycles that would be in Dublin now have been stolen motorcycles. They wouldn't be really in good repair. They'd be dangerously defective anyway, and they should be destroyed and taken off
so
the
that
road.
makes sense to you then, okay.
That does make sense, that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Now, a brand new motorcycle that was bought at Christmas or whatever like that, or bought by somebody else, it may not necessarily be in that category, but within the legislation we have at present, if we seize a scrambler, there's a period of time there where there's an application can be made to a judge to give it back, so the person will get an opportunity to maybe, if the owner of the vehicle could advocate towards getting it back. So there's a little bit of I suppose, measured approach in that piece of legislation. We'll just have to see what comes out next. And I haven't heard much of the commentary, Fran, unfortunately, but you are getting people coming in and
we are. We're not getting all that much, but it is making headlines all over the newspapers. So I mean, it's right that we should talk about this. So some people picking up, Eddie, on that notion of how difficult it is to chase. And you have rules and regulations around that now, I think, don't you? I mean,
Well, yeah, we have a policy. We have a very strict policy now on pursuit policy, and I suppose it's a very difficult one, because the minute the blue lights go on and somebody runs from us or goes from us, whether in any type of vehicle, there is a responsibility on us as the professional drivers, as the professionals in that scenario, not to put the public at risk. And we have to. There's a number of different. I suppose if we can identify the driver, if we know the driver, if we can identify the car afterwards, there's reasons for us not to chase.
Yes.
And there are chases happening probably on a nightly basis around the country. But we have really developed that into a more manageable containment type scenarios, using the stinger devices and trying to minimise the amount of vehicles involved in those chases as well. And primarily it is to protect the public, first of all, but also the driver of the vehicle, because they have rights as well. So it's a complex area, which I suppose I was trained as a pursuit instructor in the UK a number of years ago, and when I was doing that training, how it has evolved over the years of. It was a free-for-all maybe 20 years ago. Nobody could see the dangers, but once you're educated about the dangers in relation to pursuit, how you manage that pursuit, and I often say that when I was training, we would do fair speeds now, Fran, to train people, but if we were doing 160 plus kilometres in the training environment, and you're saying to somebody then, well, if you had a stolen car in front of you now, what are you going to do next? like
to stop them.
Yeah, what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
So when I'd ask that question, you could see people, the light bulb moment is, we're all tearing down the road here now. So it's really important.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So, are you going to get into this scenario of hitting the back of this car or touching the car or trying to ram it at 100 miles an hour?
Which could cause chaos.
It's absolutely, you could not possibly consider those type of manoeuvres. So now what we have is we have tactics that we can employ at more safer speeds, in safer locations, and not to go into too much operational detail on this, but we do have capabilities now, and we have trained people out there that would be capable of bringing a pursuit to a safe conclusion.
Many people on to us to say that e-scooters in Tipperary are a much bigger issue than the Scramblers, and I probably would go along with that. We've spoken about e-scooters in the past. Now there's talk about legislation around that and more regulation around that in terms of them wearing high-vis and helmets and stuff. I presume you'd have no issue with that, Eddie.
Look, I think I've mentioned this before. At the very beginning of this, I was on another group where we went to Europe. We researched a whole lot of what was happening European-wise at that stage.
Yes.
So that was about 2019, 2020. And I came back and I spoke to my colleagues and I said, if these come in here, it's going to be extremely difficult for us to police it. And that was my initial reaction to it, because when you bring in laws and legislation, like from a practical policing point of view, we have to be able to enforce them, as much as possible.
Yeah,
then.
of course.
And that was my initial, when they were talking about speed, they were talking about speed enforcement. There is a speed limit on scooters at the moment of 20 kilometres. The age, the licensing of them. So all this was obviously talked about at, again, a higher level from where we were at. But a decision was made between the Road Safety Authority and the Minister at the time for Transport. And they brought in e-scooters. And at that stage then, the legislation came in. So the problem with e-scooters, as a form of transport, I had concerns from day one about it. I still have concerns. Are they a safe form of transport? And this is where the grey area came into it. They weren't bicycles, they weren't motorcycles. They're still kind of in that grey area insofar as it has been defined now there are rules and regulations that govern them. But I think what's happening now is it was brought in, and then there's that piece in between where people have them, they're using them, and they're getting killed off them now, and they're getting seriously injured. And when you hear the stats of surgeons coming out from the Children's Hospital saying that,
the neurosurgeons,
like at the end of the day, this is one of the main factors now that's driving injuries. So I think that's what
head injuries.
If we look at it as a society now, or as a nation, of preventing injury on the roads, we have to really think about bringing in those type of vehicles, or bringing in vehicles like that, which are actually now not helping the situation and probably compounding it. So, but unfortunately, we are looking at now, we have e-scooters, they are part of our environment at the moment. From an enforcement point of view, we are enforcing the rules. It's more predominantly the cities are full of them, but they are in the countryside now.
Absolutely.
I'm seeing them. People are using them as their form of transport, whereas years ago they'd have been on a bicycle.
Yeah.
They would have definitely been cycling to work or cycling wherever to school. Now it's the e-scooters.
Yeah, I just find in the mornings in particular, Eddie, without the high vis, it's very hard to see them. And it's as simple as that. It's really, really hard to see.
Well, I definitely think the legislation did change, and there were regulations brought in, so it did try and address some of the concerns we had. So, for example, they're supposed to have a light to the front, they're supposed to have a light to the rear. The yellow jacket is optional, the helmet is optional, similar to the bicycles. So there's similarities there. And we have, when we're looking at it then of the dangers associated with them, look, and then you also have the whole sharing the space on the road.
Yeah.
And when we go into this now, it's going to light up again, Fran, because you're talking about people, they're vulnerable road users that are using them now, no matter what they're doing with them or how they're using them. Obviously, if they're using them illegally, it's up for us to enforce it. But they're on the road now. So if people don't give enough space, if they don't make some allowance for the safety of everybody moving around on the roads, then they're coming into conflict.
But again, they shouldn't be on the footpaths. They shouldn't be on the cycle lanes either, I think.
No, they're supposed to be on the road.
They're supposed to be on the road.
This is the change that happened when they started to regulate it. And, so sometimes I'm sure that the drivers of the e-scooter are saying, I'm safer on the footpath. But then you're putting all the pedestrians at risk.
Yeah,
and then the cycle paths are not designed for them either. So they've put them on the roads now. They have put in a number of different caveats with them. Look, if they exceed the speed limit, it's a €50 fine. So there are fines there. Reasonable consideration for other road users. If they're in contravention of that, there's a fine.
But
it goes into, there's an array of things.
I guess it's policing that. You have to be there on the spot for all of these.
It's a difficult one to police again.
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult to see I suppose people are coming across them when we're not there.
Yeah, of course. A couple of other things as well, Eddie. Some changes with chief supers and supers in the county as well.
Yeah, we had I suppose at the end of last year there was a number of changes at, I suppose, the managerial level.
Yes.
It doesn't have a major impact on policing, but Superintendent Niall O'Connell, who was in Clonmel, who would have been known to you here and the listeners now, has moved to back to Cork, and we have Superintendent James Hallahan now has taken up in Clonmel, newly promoted superintendent, and wish him well in his new role there. And we have Liam McGrainer, superintendent, has come up from Kerry up to Nina, replacing Superintendent Alan Cullen, who has moved on to Limerick now. So I'm still in the middle. That's the only thing I can say is I'm still here.
Yes.
And we have another superintendent has moved then. Superintendent Conor Dillon moved out of our performance assurance area, and Superintendent Susan O'Brien has moved here, and Susan is a native of Clonmel actually, so she's coming back in, so it's good to have the Tipperary people.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to, we might meet them on the programme at some stage or other. I was told that you have to give a plug to the play that's happening in New Inn, because you're involved in that, aren't you?
Yeah, I appreciate just a moment maybe just to give a little mention to the Father Matthew players in New Inn. I'm not on stage this year, Fran. I'm the Master of Ceremonies, I think they call it. Is it a role that you have often...
The compere,
yeah. So we're presenting By the Bog of Cats by Marion Carr. It's a really good play. It's over 14s is what we were advised in relation to, because some of the themes are obviously a little bit more adult. But we've a brilliant cast at the moment, practicing very hard for it, and it's going to run from the 10th to the 14th of February. That's Tuesday to Saturday night. And again, tickets are €20. There's a concession night on the Tuesday night, which would be the 10th. And if anybody wants tickets, they can get them through the Fiery Pharmacy in Cashel, or you can ring Esther on 086 35 83 719. There's a slight change in that number that was on the original posters. So look, and we're on Facebook and like that. So look, and on the Wednesday night we have a special raffle going towards the New Inn Girls Sensory Room, which they're doing there as well. So we're hoping that it'll be a great week of entertainment there, and looking forward to it.
So somebody posing a question, but it's not really up to you, I suppose, wondering why school buses in the countryside, the kids getting off them aren't wearing high vis. It should be law. It's so dangerous on these dark mornings. Now you can't enforce this, but I presume your advice would be
we do visit schools and school buses to make sure they're wearing their seatbelts, and I think the seatbelt wearing is...
do you? You inspect the buses?
Oh, we inspect the buses,
okay.
And that's an important part of it. And actually, we mentioned about checkpoints, and I know, again, in the public arena at the moment, there's correlation between Garda checkpoints and road safety, and I think... Is it Cynthia Moraku has...
Yeah, she was on about the drug testing on the increase in Tipperary.
And I think, look... Yeah, that is a factor. But if we took away the Garda checkpoints... Now, can I also say the Tipperary Clare Roads Policing Units are one of the highest performing units for checkpoints in the country. And when we look at the stats... So, I suppose my members are doing their best to do as many checkpoints as possible. But when I talk about road safety, and I think that is one aspect to it, but I think there's far more aspects to that. There's road design. When we look at the whole traffic calming, roundabouts instead of junctions, proper lighting, proper signage on the roads, giving the information to the public, that's a really important one. So well-designed roads, I think, prevent mistakes becoming fatal. We've also the speed management then.
And do I take from that, Eddie, you have an issue with how some of the roads are designed?
I think the more design goes into roads when it comes to road safety, the better the roads are. And I think that's been proven with the motorway systems. It's been proven by some of the villages where traffic calming has been brought in. They are safer places to cross the road. They're far more informative of the driver to slow down, because they're coming into an area where the risk associated with a collision or with a fatality or with knocking down somebody is far more prevalent. The speed enforcement, speed is obviously a factor as well, but I'm just, speed awareness, I think even a 5 kilometre reduction at times can have a massive effect. The technology in the vehicles as well has had a major influence on road safety. Lane departure warnings, blind spot warnings, intelligent speed assistance programs in cars, driver education and long-term education. I think this is the key. Like if you look at a 5-year-old or 6-year-old now getting education about seatbelt wearing, who are now telling adults. So education
which
is a vital key to this.
But Mick was onto us. He's a bus driver, and he was just making the point that it's very, very hard to manage this for one person on the bus. So education is hugely important.
It is, and I do. Look, the bus drivers have enough job to drive the bus, and it's a very responsible job. And look, you're talking about distractions like that. I know when I was back taking the bus to school, we had the boss of the bus. Do you ever heard the boss of the bus? No. I don't know how it worked, but there was some child that was...
Oh, right, like a prefect.
Like a prefect on the bus, and they made sure everybody... I don't know, is that's still in place now? But you can imagine the difficulty of a driver of a minibus trying to keep these kids in their seats and stuff.
I can't imagine.
It has to be enforced by education, by the parents, when the parents get on the bus, or the teachers and the schools. So there's a combination of all this. So I just finally on that, checkpoints are one aspect of it. I think but there's far more social norms. That drink driving, social behaviour has become serious. The drug driving, John was talking about it earlier on. So look, let's just focus on 2026. Let's try and make the roads a safer place. We'll be talking about it again, Fran. And I suppose, look, that's all we can say for the moment.
Eddie, good to see you as always. Thanks very much for coming in to us. That's Superintendent Eddie Golden. News and information's coming up.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.